All right, everyone, and welcome to the Tired Boys podcast. Thank you for joining us. I'm your host, Justin.
And I'm Aaron. So, welcome back for another episode of the podcast. We've got our quick hitters today, some Indy Car F1, F2, F3, hitting all the Fs. But, Justin, good to see you. I'm ready to get in. We've got a lot to talk about.
Yeah, good to see you too. Big episode coming up. Turns out I lied to the people, but we'll get into that at the start of the episode. Just roll the intro. Just
You're
this
not
chatbot for me.
2D. Yeah.
Yeah. So it was fun to reach out and touch you, my friend.
Circuit of the Americas is where it's a track that was created for racing.
So the race is a flat fee, and then it's the bake off afterwards where things get really kooky.
Okay, that's where all the weirdness comes in. Mercedes definitely started planning for their new car.
If Red Bull came out and was just like, Adrian Newey designed our car.
Yeah.
Whoa, yeah, did he really?
No way.
And great. Just like I was saying, last episode we did a get to know Australia, and me and Aaron met with a little bit of confusion, and it turns out you were right. I should have checked my sources. I was of the belief that an Australian has been on the podium of the Australian Grand Prix, which I was wrong about. You were correct. Weber only maxed out, I believe, at like P5 or P6 there. So I don't know. I don't know what I saw.
No, so I think you were almost right, but Ricardo was disqualified in the 2014 Australian Grand Prix for a fuel flow issue that they exceeded the maximum fuel flow. I believe he stood on I think he finished on the podium, but was disqualified then after the race. So from what because I did a little digging on my own, and he finished, I believe, P3, but then was disqualified. So he was on the podium, but it didn't actually count as the highest placement of an Australian driver.
Ah, interesting. Okay, gotcha. But
Yeah.
that's what we're here for, to live and learn. But yeah, just wanted to make sure I corrected that. Because yeah, we were trying to bring you guys some good info. So yeah, just wanted to correct that. But we've got a bunch of other good quick hitters to get into. So Aaron, let's talk about the 100 Days to Indy that's coming up on Netflix.
Yeah, so it's I feel like just Netflix is trying to kind of capture this moment of people being interested in the behind the scenes of these different sports and everything. They've had Full Swing for the PGA Tour, of course, Drive to Survive with F1. I think they did one with tennis as well recently. Some of like Point Break or Break Point or something like that. So
Gotcha.
they are, and also there's a NASCAR like Drive to Survive that came out recently. So they're moving on to Indy Car, hitting the different motorsports. Before we know it, MotoGP and all of that will probably have their own. But the 100 Days to Indy is going to be premiering on Netflix on April 4th. So might be something interesting to check out. It seems, of course, like it's more focused down on the Indy 500 compared to the entirety of the IndyCar season. But looking forward to checking that out and just diving into a little more IndyCar.
Well, that makes sense. Like instead of trying to capture, the feel of, a whole IndyCar season, that is interesting because especially the IndyCar 500, I've heard it referred to as, the pinnacle of motorsport, the greatest motorsport event of the year. So obviously they're trying, yeah, they're naming that big and above everything else. So it's interesting that they would, focus on that one big event, which honestly, like to me, makes sense. There's a lot of history with the Indy 500. It's a even somebody that's outside of motorsport, they definitely know what the Indy 500 is, you know?
Right.
So it could be just a good, like, landing board for a motorsport adjacent guy to, like, get in and have something, like, to look forward to or learn about.
Yeah, and with the Indy 500, I think the other part of it that's kind of interesting is there's a lot of um, just like single entries for that race where drivers
Hmm.
are just put in, and like Helio Castro Nieves is going to be, I believe, driving for someone in the Indy 500, although he's not competing in the full IndyCar season this year as a kind of semi-retired. We've had uh, I forget if Jensen Button drove in the Indy 500. I feel like he did NASCAR, but we have a lot of other just individual entries that get added on. It's not just the standard IndyCar grid, so it makes it a bit more of an interesting event, and I think that is cool because you'll be able to cover drivers who are involved who aren't normally there for the full IndyCar season.
For sure.
So definitely looking to check that out when it comes out April 4th. But a little more IndyCar. We had the Thermal Club $1 million challenge this past weekend. And I didn't see a ton of it. I went back and watched the highlights, so I'll let you kind of lead into this one and talk about it a bit more.
Yeah, it was just kind of an exciting weekend. Obviously, there was the bunch of qualifying rounds, and then there were like, I guess it was like, yeah, qualifying rounds, and then the top six or something racers of those then get seeded into what ended up being 20 laps on Sunday, the sprint for the purse. Quite an exciting weekend, honestly. A lot on the line where like it didn't feel like anybody was like pulling punches or didn't really care. Like, it seemed like everybody wanted to win that cash. Unfortunately, our boy Grosjean got knocked out, so his chances were, his chances got slim pretty quick. But Pillow had a crazy weekend. But you look at this guy, and obviously he's prepared to win events like that. He's no stranger. One of the drivers that really did stick out to me was Colton Herta. Oh, like in the sprint race on Sunday, he just had a stellar race. It was a different strategy where the plan was to kind of, I guess, ease off or hold off on the first stint, like the first 10 laps, and then he would have, a bunch of power over the other drivers. He would have more push to pass, and man, he hammered that strategy home. It was very exciting. It was like a P9 or like P8 start to the race for him, gets all the way up to a P4 finish, made some really key overtakes, and I thought he just had a great day. For a lot of drivers that really stayed, excuse me, a lot of drivers that really stayed stagnant. I mean, it was fun to watch the amount of overtakes he was able to get done.
Yeah, and he like in that first stint that you were talking about, he kind of went to the extreme. I heard them on the highlights and broadcasts and everything saying that anyone who you had to be at least within 10 seconds of the car in front of you to like stay in the running for the second stint. But he basically just sat back at that 10-second point, way behind everyone else, to save tires, avoid driving in the dirty air. And so that strategy, coming back to him in the second half when he did have the tire life and everything to be able to make some of those moves, pulling off some uh, pretty risky dives down the inside of some turns to pick up positions. Was gifted a couple with Alexander Rossi and Joseph Newgarden kind of clashing at one point, going off
Hmm.
track. So a little bit of good strategy and good driving, a little bit of help there for Colton Herta, but ends up finishing, I believe it was P4 overall, which took $100,000 in the prize pot there. So
Yeah, so really good Sunday for him. So yeah, that was the IndyCar Challenge, which I thought, or the IndyCar $1 million Challenge, I should say. So yeah, I thought it was interesting, a kind of one of of late for IndyCar. So
yeah, pretty
definitely
unique.
something fun.
Yeah, unique style weekend and everything kind of
Hmm.
adds a little bit of spice to everything.
For sure.
So yeah, definitely a cool event. But moving over towards some F1 related news. So Susie Wolf, who of course is the I guess she's the director of the Formula One or the Formula Academy series, but she had some complaints and investigations next year or last year by the FIA. And so she has filed a criminal complaint against the FIA in the French courts regarding their investigation kind of being pretty unsubstantiated. It seems like someone just made an offhand comment, and someone at the FIA was like, "Oh, we gotta look into this," and found nothing. So. Kind of an embarrassing incident for the FIA in general, to kind of call her integrity into question, and so that's kind of led to this complaint that she's filed now.
Yeah, I hope all goes well for her. It seems like she may have a case against them, and you don't want the governing bodies of the thing that you work for to you know get away with every uh, what would you say? Like, if it's an uncalled for investigation, you wouldn't want that to repeat itself. So,
Right.
this individual standing up against it could make them, maybe rethink their approach. So, that could be good for multiple parties.
Yeah, and especially in an instance where it was all, I mean, what true or not, all of the other F1 teams outside of Mercedes all posted basically the same blanket statement. It seemed like all the team principals in their group text was like, here's what we're saying.
Hmm.
Just being like, we did not file any complaint against Mercedes or looking into this, because all of them were like, yeah, this is not worth worth looking into. They didn't think that anything was happening. So the
Okay.
FIA kind of took that whatever reason, took it and ran. And yeah, hopefully this will deter them from just like I kind of making unwarranted investigations in the future.
For sure.
So, but then you had a little quick hitter for the play seat and F1 as well.
Oh yeah, just a little bit of news that's like near and dear to my heart. So there's like a sim racing company. They make wheels. They make all sorts of peripherals and sim racing setups. Um, they're partnering with Formula One to develop their own. It's called the Formula Intelligence. Their own like what's the right word? F1 sponsored simulator product where previously, it's just Playseat making them independently for whatever racing games, but this will be the first time, F1's, partnering with this company to make something that they've seemed to take input from various different parties around F1 and F1 motorsport to like get a bunch of input to make sure it feels very real in the cockpit. So that just sounded very exciting. It's likely a product that's outside of my budget.
Same, I
But
would imagine.
for sure, but for someone that's been able to enjoy, a racing wheel and, f- feel a very small scale comparison of what they would be trying to accomplish. Yeah, that sounds very cool, and I can imagine it would be a lot of fun to get in one of those and play like an F1 game or whatever it is. So I just thought that'd be cool to talk about with you.
Yeah, well, and I think I would imagine that there have been a few of these like Formula One bars that have popped up that have like racing simulators in them. They play
Oh whoa,
the yeah. There's I think one in London. I think there was maybe one in I don't know Toronto, Montreal, somewhere. I
gotcha.
feel like there's only a couple of them around, but they have like a few racing simulator setups and everything. But they'll also broadcast the F1 races and whatnot for the patrons and everything. So I feel like that's
Hmm.
kind of in that vein where it could be like a internet cafe kind of deal where you could a company could be like, oh yeah, like we'll buy these setups and then people can like rent them out, use them, and whatnot. That might be a pretty optimal market for this play seat F1
Damn,
crossover.
that's an interesting idea. So like a PC bong for like racing games specifically.
Yeah, or even
Hell
if you
yeah.
have like a like PC Bong Internet Cafe or whatever for other stuff, have a few of these in there as well that people can have a cool sim racing setup and all.
Damn, dude, that would be the life. Get out of school, go to the internet cafe, and just get your laps in, and just hot
Yep.
lap everybody.
Just doing some free practice long run sessions, just putting in the laps, testing out tires, getting ready for the race.
That'd be the dream, dude. But that would be money that I don't currently have. Unlike the sovereign wealth fund here that we'll talk about, they were able to make. I would imagine they'd be able to purchase a lot of those.
Oh yeah, I would think so. And so yeah, the Bahrain's sovereign wealth fund, which is I guess a some sort of national conglomeration of money and whatnot, has
My favorite.
purchased they've purchased full ownership of the McLaren group for the auto manufacturer and everything. But along with that, they now have majority stake in the McLaren Formula One team. Which I think is just interesting to kind of keep an eye on. The CEO has so new CEO after this purchase and everything from the Sovereign Wealth Fund has come in to say that they are looking to kind of have the fund be an engine for deals. So potentially driver deals, engineers, like staff and drivers that can bolster the F1 team and kind of push them up the grid potentially by having that full funding. So
Hmm.
it'll be interesting, especially with the majority stake. I mean, they now have the ability to change leadership. Not that I think Zach Brown is going anywhere or that there needs to be a change at McLaren by any means. I think they're doing pretty well, but depending how things go, it will be interesting to see if they are making any changes kind of in that structure of the organization for the McLaren F1 team.
Yeah, that'd be an interesting question because honestly, like you look at what was it, 2023, where or tough to remember. I think maybe 2022 actually, where Zach Brown changed his role or position, and then they brought Andrea Stella in as team principal, and then Zach Brown just like took a step back and just like kept his role as CEO. Like he's still on the pit wall, but Andrea Stella has the that team principal role. Ever
Yeah.
since then, McLaren's been on the rise. It obviously I'm sure there it's a multivariate issue that was solved with a bunch of different solutions combined, but it seems like that shift in leadership was at least a catalyst for good change for McLaren. So I'd be curious if they would want to mess with that strategy, especially, coming off of some good success recently. Obviously you could always make improvements, but it seems like the McLaren leadership is doing pretty well at the moment, even after a what I would argue like to be a pretty good shift and a shift to the positive.
Yeah, and I agree. I think based on the trajectory, but if there is a fall off in performance, we may see some quicker potential change
Right.
than that. But at the moment, I agree. There's not really a need, and I think they've kind of figured out a good system, and hopefully this will just be positive for them, bringing in more potential for engineers or other support staff to bolster the team, who have two really good drivers locked in for a few more years. So
Yeah. I do want to say this about Middle Eastern money though, is like that's going to be news that you hear more and more, coming across the pipeline. We're seeing big shifts in the Formula One calendar to better suit what seems to be, Middle Eastern viewership and eyes, and the sponsorships are, these large oil companies and this and that. We've been seeing a larger influx of Middle Eastern money into like different esports and just different international sports in general. And it brings an interesting angle. Say what you want about it, but I think it will become more common in the headlines as some of these international companies begin to intermingle with, some of that Middle Eastern money and gaining access to what previously would have been, maybe out of reach assets. Yeah, you could
yeah.
say. So just interesting, and I think we're going to see a little bit more of it soon, like, coming here shortly.
Yeah, it wouldn't shock me, and like you said, we've seen it in other sports with offers for European football players and just all sorts of, like you said, esports as well. Um,
Hmm.
so yeah, definitely something I want to keep an eye on. I do find it pretty interesting, just to see kind of how that goes, and if it does make any changes, or if it is just something that kind of it lies in the background for the meantime and everything, until, say, McLaren has a fall off in performance, or something like that kind of happen.
Hmm.
So
Yeah.
yeah, something to keep an eye on. But we'll of course, I'm sure, hear more if there's any other changes or purchases and money coming in. But looking at the Australian Grand Prix weekend, wanted to start off with just a little bit of F3, where we saw a pretty just interesting incident in, I believe it was in the qualifying session, where we see one of the drivers, Nicholas Solov, making contact with Alex Dunn, another driver who impeded him on one of his hot laps. Just flies up next to him on the straight, gives him a little nudge into the wall, and just I mean, I know that F3 drivers are younger drivers and everything, so there's a different level of maturity than what we see with Formula One for the most part.
For the
But
most part, I was going to say
for
see
the
Yuki
most part,
Tsunoda.
but yeah, but I mean the like just the danger of what can happen in these cars. I mean, we've seen kind of awful things happen when there are dangerous situations across motorsports in general, and so to just put someone at risk unnecessarily, I thought it was pretty light for him to just get a three-place grid penalty, as opposed to at least a DQ from the weekend, like maybe a suspension, because it's just like, even if in this case, he said, "Oh, I didn't mean to actually hit him. I just wanted to get close to him to like be like, yo, you blocked me, and you're gonna put other drivers at risk whether you intentionally hit them or not." I still think you did hit them intentionally, and that just shouldn't be tolerated at all. At that level of sport, it should be like, nope, like you're done, at least for the weekend, and then
Sure.
move
At
on.
least for the weekend.
At the very least, I the F3 calendar is not extremely long, so suspensions for multiple races and whatnot would be pretty. Like I feel like you'd have to have some extreme circumstances, but I mean this was pretty insane to me in general. So I feel like that could even be warranted in this situation.
Dude, extreme is a good word for it because honestly, the contact, like in the clip, looks like he's playing a burnout revenge game. And he's just, trying to get the points, putting drivers into the wall.
Yeah.
Very clean takedown. He goes, wheel to wheel, just bumping rubber. But hey, you know how I feel, dude. Rubbing is racing, and that's just how it is. Honestly, dude, it's Dunn's fault that he couldn't keep his car under control. That's how I see it.
That's fair. He should have gotten picked up like in Mario Kart, where they pick you up off the wall and just drop you back in the middle of the track, let you keep going.
Right, right. He
I
should have just
mean,
reset, dude.
yeah, just just yeah, hold the wheel a little tighter, man. But
No, but honestly, really aggressive move and probably not something that we really want to see. Dude, that's very similar. You remember that clip you sent me? It was like 2, 3 years back of that karting kid that like
oh
chucks
yeah,
the wing that chucks the wing like
like
out in front
onto
of
the
like
track, like after he got
yeah.
knocked out. Yeah, that was just
Yeah, that was some wild shit. And this is kind of like on that level where it's so ridiculous that I don't know what to say about it other than just to make jokes and hope that it never happens again.
Oh, absolutely, because that's kind of at this point all we can do. But it's just yeah, I have a feeling that might hurt some of his prospective opportunities in the future just a wee
Yeah,
bit.
it's not looking
So
good.
he's gonna have to be like just win every single race at this point to kind of make up for them looking past that. Like, yeah, he
Hmm.
may have finished P4 in the championship, but do we really want to bring him up to F2? So
Yeah.
hopefully you live and you learn, and like you said, we won't see more incidents. A pretty wild incident, though. I don't know if you watched the F2 feature race, but on right off the start of the race, we see a pretty huge collision where you see before they even got past the pit lane exit fully. You see Isaac Hajar kind of cut over, ends up in his blind spot, knocking into another, I believe, another junior Red Bull Racing member on the grid, who then takes out another guy. This just chain reaction, binning them into the wall at the pit lane exit, where Enzo Fittipaldi is starting from the pit lane. So he's just like, you see his car view and just these car, like, lights out, cars come sliding across into the wall, and then the light goes green in the pit lane. It's like, you can go now. I was like, but can you? Like, just a wild start to that.
Hmm.
And then after going on to take the lead, eventually finish first in the race, Isaac Hajar, and got a post-race 10-second time penalty where he dropped down to P6 for the race, losing the win overall. And I find it interesting because that was not the only penalty that happened in this F2 race. We had Franco Colapinto, who had finished in P7, who is DQ'd from the feature race as well because he didn't engage his race startup procedure, which broke the technical regulations. And I don't know if it's just because I'm paying more attention to Formula 2 but it kind of feels like this year has started off pretty poorly with these teams and penalties and everything.
Mm.
Like this startup with Franco Colapinto, breaking the regulations, getting him disqualified and everything is sounds pretty similar to there was like someone I think last race who is disqualified for ignoring the race director's instructions, or there was like some other Formula 2 penalty recently that we discussed, and I'm like, I feel like every race there's something like this that are like completely we saw two drivers from, I think it was Campos, possibly it was like Versure or Trident. We had both Trident drivers disqualified from one of the sessions last race weekend due to the improper throttle pedal program or whatever. And it's like these technical regulation breaches. That's now 3 drivers who have been disqualified from portions of the weekend due to these breaches of technical regulations and all. And I'm just pretty surprised. Like, Formula 2 is a very professional series in general, in my mind, and to have that many like errors from kind of the team and driver side this quickly in the season is pretty bizarre.
Yeah. That feels a little isolationist in the sense that, like, I mean, we see crash outs, DNFs, we see minute-long pit stops for Valtteri where Formula One teams can't get wheel nut temps right. You know, like, I I don't know if it's any like better or worse or different than like the some of the weird snafus that we see in Formula One. Isolationist may be like a bad word for it. Maybe just like to use what you were saying, where like you're just maybe paying attention to it more, so you're getting more
Like,
of like the nitty gritty of what's going on. Like it could be pretty Wild West, all the time.
yeah, I mean, and so also, I mean, a very small data pool to pull from or to
For
pull
sure.
from for it. So I just, yeah, it's just surprising because at least with like the wheel nut issues and things like that, those aren't like just breaking the rules and getting disqualified. Like, you screw over your driver and everything with that, but to just be like, oh, they didn't follow the specific XYZ that they're supposed to when they're at the start of the race, or oh, we had the wrong throttle pedal computer program loaded up on the car. Like, sorry, bud, you just drove the full race and perform. And it's also possible that because of the good performances of the drivers in these instances that get disqualified, it kind of stands out a bit more.
Interesting. See,
But
I would hazard to guess that it's not all on the driver. It feels
oh yeah, it's definitely
like a team thing.
yeah, which is why
Right.
it kind of surprises me that there are these errors being made that are like level of like getting your driver disqualified from the race. Like, the
Yeah, of
teams have been
course.
around long enough that they should not be, in my mind, it shouldn't have happened already where we've had 3 disqualifications due to like technical regulation breaches. That seems like a lot for this early.
Okay. Yeah, fair enough.
But something to maybe just keep an eye on and be like, okay, is this actually is it more anecdotal because we have just such a small pool of races and everything, or if it's actually something a little bit more like just bizarre that we're seeing this. So in the F2 race, that does end up getting Roman Stanek promoted to the win. We saw Kimi Antonelli finish P4, which I believe then promoted him into P3 for the finish of the race. So a bunch of moving around. Kimi Antonelli with a nice grab of points. Ollie Behrman picked up some points as well. And so we also saw Zane Maloney get promoted from P3 to P2 and picking up another nice haul to extend his lead in the championship.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so it seems like a couple of pretty strong drivers to look out for, getting a good number of points. Obviously, some of them benefiting a little bit from the from the loss there, but gotta be there to scoop the points up.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's a shorter season, so you have to take all the opportunities you can. Their
Mm-hmm.
next race isn't till mid-May at Imola, so they have a pretty big stretch now after this hot start with Bahrain, Saudi Arabia, and
Mm-hmm.
Australia before we'll get to see a bit more F2 driving. But now to slide into the Formula One weekend, to start things off, we'll hit the good, the bad, and the Latifi to get things rolling.
Yeah, just a way, to kind of hit the highlights of the race. Let me give you my little setup here. So my good here was the McLaren finish for sure. We saw team orders come in between Oscar and Lando, just kind of a pace thing, strategy thing. Ended up, being pretty lucrative for them. Obviously, with the Red Bull struggling, they were able to slide up into that P3 P4 slot. So enjoy the teamwork here. You have Piastri stating that fair play, that's up to the team, and he's just there to support that. So I thought that was solid for the weekend.
Yeah, and I definitely so I considered that with my good, but I had a feeling that would be yours for this week.
Sure.
Because I mean it was a great performance for McLaren, a huge haul of points, their biggest in like half a year, or since somewhere midway last season and all. So a really nice weekend for them, and I totally agree. The I like the team orders in this situation, and that the drivers both kind of were understanding about it and all, because you have McLaren pitting Piastri early to cover off George Russell so that he doesn't get undercut, which then eventually kind of catches up to Lando for him being pushed onto a longer stint and everything. So it's like you made that decision for the team and for points for the team to try and like secure the best result you can, but still fair play to Lando, who was up ahead in the race and kind of got shafted a little bit with the pit stop plan, getting
Mm-hmm.
the opportunity to come back through and everything without any arguments from Oscar. So really good just team play from them and the McLaren team there. But for myself, for the good this week, of course, I've been talking about the man a bit, but Carlos Sainz was a stud. He comes back from appendicitis and surgery to start off first off qualifying in P2, right behind Max, but then to just put a lights out drive on the track. Just there was once Max DNF'd, there was really not much doubt in my mind that Sainz was going to just cruise out front and all. He looked really good all weekend, and just had a impressive drive to break Max's win streak once again.
Yeah, that was pretty much like an off the like from the line to victory type race. You know, obviously Max suffering the brake failure or whatever. So yeah, solid day for Carlos, and then on top of it, like strong day for Ferrari, where you know their tire strategy they don't fuck anything up. There's no driver quarrels or anything like that. So yeah, just solid 1-2 there for Ferrari. Just well done, pretty much all around.
Yeah, running very smoothly this weekend for the Ferrari squad. But why don't you go ahead and give me your bad for this week?
Well, I already kind of mentioned it because it just like, dude, oh man, it just hurts so bad. The continued wheel nut failures during pit stops for Kick Sauber, it's like it's a running joke now. Like multiple races.
Every race.
Yeah, the drivers are experiencing setbacks from things that are well outside of their control. So that's huge bad for me, and it just hurts to see like race winning Valtteri, who is, I. It's unfortunate that great drivers, you just say good drivers, can just look so dog shit. Like
Yeah.
considering the context of the car that they're in, you know what I'm saying? And this is just that. Like you're not going to win races if your pit stops are a minute long.
Well, and the car underneath the drivers is already not a car that's really going to typically be in points contention, and then you're also just eliminating them from any possibility of it.
Yeah.
It's brutal. But on the bright side, Valtteri had a pretty cool commercial that he did for Australia, like Uber car share. So it was pretty funny, and I at least got to laugh with Valtteri a little bit this week instead of laughing at Kick Sauber for the poor performance.
For sure. Well, yeah, that's that's a bright spot then you could say.
Yeah, just seeing that bleach blonde mullet blowing in the wind just is it just warms my heart.
It honestly makes me want one.
I don't think I could pull one off. I think you might be able to, but I feel like I don't know about the bleach blonde. You might just have to stick with the brown hair mullet for yourself.
I don't know, dude. I used to spray sun in my hair. You know what that
Yeah,
is?
lighten it up and everything. Yep.
Yeah, basically just lemon juice in a bottle, I'm pretty sure.
Most likely, but
Yeah.
well, for my bad this week, I just had it's a bad week for visor tear offs because they of course were a hot topic. We had Esteban Ocon get one stuck in a brake duct to where he had to do an extra pit stop, which really ruined his race in terms of opportunities. He was very close to being able to bag some points for Alpine, who desperately need it, and that is just the kind of luck that goes on top of their tough start to the year so far.
Yeah.
So a frustrating situation for Ocon and Alpine with that, but then as well, we found out post race that Checo had a visor tear off from Fernando Alonso that was stuck in the floor channels of his car, which caused a big drop in performance with the downforce and whatnot later on in the race. So Checo, even in his interview before finding this out, just like he had no idea. He genuinely just thought the car, for whatever reason, didn't have the pace it needed that weekend. But come to find out that he struggled to be able to make up those positions and all because he just the arrow was all out of whack.
Do you think there's ever a world where the meta becomes drivers like ripping multiple tear-offs when they know, a key driver's behind them and effectively
Yeah,
just like red shelling behind them?
it's Mario Kart. You're throwing banana peels.
That'd be
Sometimes
that'd
they
be
hit, sometimes they don't.
that'd be wicked. But here, give me your ugly because I think we may have a similar one and I'll offer you a pretty funny angle on it.
All right, so my ugly this week is with the Williams situation, where Alex Albon crashes in practice session one, does too much damage to his chassis for it to be used, and for a birthday present, Logan Sargent gifts him his chassis, sits out the race weekend, and even James Vowles came out and said that it was kind of he said it's a unacceptable situation in modern Formula One. It's been, a lot of people were saying it's pretty embarrassing that they're in a position where they don't have a spare chassis for the weekend, and are forced to kind of do the optimal thing, which it would be give Alex Albon the chassis from Logan's car, but just awful. Like Logan had a fine practice session and everything, and just comes into work the next day and is like, "I'm here to drive my car," and they're like, "What car?" So he took it pretty well, but I mean it's a messy, ugly situation that like I wouldn't have imagined happening. Like James Vowles said, in this era of F1 where they're just stuck, no spare, not even an old model or something that they can throw out there. So.
Yeah, quite surprising, but I'll tell you somebody that definitely took advantage of it was Kevin Magnussen. The way he was racing Alex Albon on Sunday, was wonderful. He was aggressive. He was like taking dives, lunges, like multiple attempts to get past Alex. And the thought would be like, well, he's not going to risk like losing the car. He's likely going to give me a whole lot of room. So Kevin Magnussen, my ugly is Albon not being able to defend and like, dude, just being taken advantage by Magnussen.
Getting mugged by that Scandinavian man.
Yeah, dude. Yeah, it was like a mugging on track. He knew he couldn't like protect himself, kind of.
Yeah, I mean that's definitely a more humorous side to kind of a pretty tough situation.
Sure.
I really feel for Logan, because you're out there and you're doing like you're trying to do everything right. You're trying to show that you have the performance and earn your spot to stay on the grid and everything, and then they're like, yeah, sorry, you just don't get to race this weekend. You didn't do anything wrong, but like the guy who crashed out still has a better shot at points than you, so sorry, man.
Yeah, I definitely would not want to be in that position.
Yeah,
That'd be rough.
So that's the good, the bad, and the Latifi for this week. But to kind of just get into the rest of the race and all, I think outside. Well, we can talk about it first. Max with the DNF, some weird brake caliper locking issue on the back right, melting the wheel hub. Burning and catching the tire on fire. We saw parts falling off, explosions of air coming out of the tire as he made it back to the pit lane. But I think the craziest thing from all of that was that he was still able to fight with Sainz while his back right brake was like locked up for the first 3 laps. Like he was still battling it out and going after it with this locked right rear brake.
Yeah, to a certain degree, yes, but it was always not going well.
Oh yeah, there was no way that that issue was going to work itself out. But I think at the time he just didn't know what the issue was. It was
For
like, I'm
sure.
just pedal to the metal, and he was still duking it out for a little bit before having to bring it in. But I mean, a really impressive stretch by Red Bull where he had no DNFs since Australia 2022. So a pretty nice run. It's a bummer to see. I mean, I'm not disappointed that someone other than Max won, because it does make it a bit more exciting. However, I would just love to see it be completely on merit, where they're battling it out and the better driver and car take the win. This did add some extra excitement to this race. It kind of needed it. Because there was a pretty long stretch in the middle where the race did kind of slow down a little bit. But yeah, I mean, I'm super happy for Carlos. I think he took advantage of the opportunity, like we've talked about in previous episodes, putting himself in the right place for anything to happen and take advantage.
Yeah, I definitely see what you're saying, where, you would want the victory for opponent of Max to, like, be on merit. I doubt any of the teams that have to race against them feel the same.
Oh, for
Like,
sure.
dude, they must be just so quietly happy that they can finally just, like,
Well, why be quietly happy? You could be Ted
sure.
Kravitz and just be boldly laughing and joking and just cheering about Max DNFing, just like savoring in that just beauty that he sees in just being anti Red Bull. It's just I mean, I always I've had my issues with Ted. I just think he's a
Sure.
bit too opinionated to be like one of the primary broadcasters, but or
Hmm.
part. I just don't like biased takes from like the international broadcasts or national broadcasts. In other sports, baseball, football, like baseball games, there's so many of them in a major league season that there are some games that the only feed you can watch is one home team's announcers, and you can hear some very biased announcing from that. You can hear it. Hockey is very similar with that. But then when there's the national broadcast and they bring the guys who are supposed to be unbiased, where Sky Sports is the international broadcast for Formula One,
Mm-hmm.
other than the F1 TV broadcast that you can do. Like if you're watching ESPN, that's the Sky Sports broadcast, and
Mm-hmm.
he's just like cheering and hooting and hollering about Max DNFing, and then just going, no, 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 it's not that I wanted him to DNF. It's just because I wanted someone else to win. And like that's fine. Like I
Mm-hmm.
don't mind other people winning, but I have a beef with Ted Kravitz about doing it in a position where I feel he should be more unbiased.
Some thoughts here on that. So Max was in Max was at no time in danger. His
Oh
safety
no.
was not really ever in question, which to me takes a lot of the load off of the presenters and the people who are doing commentary for like that event and the sport. Like if there is any question of
Oh
danger or
yeah.
mortal threat, you can the tone changes for every single one of them. Also, so I say he wasn't being inappropriate in that regard.
Okay.
Also, Ted Kravitz is known for boisterous takes and being a bit of a bit of a point of levity for the F1 broadcast specifically. Some of his takes can be, angle bit of a joke, like from the pit lane. They seem to allow him to be a little more critical. If that came from David Croft, I would feel like, wait, whoa, because like he's the main commentator. They kicked to
Yeah,
Ted
it's
Kravitz like just for a little bit of flavor. And here's the last thing I'll offer you is every single fucking person is thinking it. Every single person is thinking it. And you can, or at least I can, excuse a since Australia 2022, so almost 2 years stretch of consistency and like just the most non like you would call it good luck, you would call it like unfaltering, like no matter what you want to say, Max has had an insane run of consistency, and
yeah.
I can understand a breath of just like finally this guy bleeds, like they actually bleed. I can honestly understand that.
I think I would just want it from I just think the way that he goes about it is poor form essentially, where I don't think
Agreed.
he's cheering on like people drivers being at risk or like anything like that, but the fact that instead of going, oh man, with Max DNFing, like this really opened the door for some excitement. We don't know what's gonna happen. Leclerc's there, Checo's trying to come up through the field, Sainz is out front with the lead. Like this is exciting. Like we don't know who's gonna win because a
Hmm.
dude's not 25 seconds in front of everyone else on the grid. If you come from it from that, like I'm excited because I don't know what's gonna happen, instead of being like, woohoo, DNF, yes, someone else. Like it's the same result, very different vibe. But that's my
Agreed.
my
Agreed.
beef with Ted. So I can move forward now that I've got my venting about that out.
For sure.
Um, but yeah, and looking at Max's counterpart Checo, just tough race. We talked about the tear off causing some issues, but he also just seemed to not quite have the pace this weekend. His qualifying session, unfortunately, gets the 3-place grid penalty to start off the weekend for impeding Hulkenberg, I think it was, and so a mistake dropping him down to a tougher grid position and just not able to fight his way back through, and bringing the constructors fight pretty close. I think Ferrari's 7 points back or something like that now.
Hmm.
So a huge swing in terms of that constructors battle where things seemed out of reach and are now very close comparatively. So
Yeah, I it definitely for this moment creates a little bit of parody.
yeah, so it's
Hmm.
definitely. I mean, Ferrari seems to be catching up to Red Bull. I'm just interested to see on the next weekend if Max. And I think my biggest concern initially was Max took a new power unit this week, and so if he had taken the
Hmm.
new power unit and that had been his issue, I would be a bit more just like curious how that's going to affect later in the season. But I think by Suzuka, it'll be interesting to see how Ferrari kind of stacks up to Red Bull back to kind of normal strength there.
Yeah, right. If it's just like a one-off for Red Bull kind of thing and not like indicative of a larger problem, you're saying?
Yeah, or just
Hmm.
like I'm curious to see kind of how Ferrari has gained on Red Bull and Max, and if they're able to put up a bit of a constructors battle, kind of throughout the rest of the season, maybe picking off some P2s, P3s, and everything continuing through the year. So,
Yeah, no, I definitely see what you're saying. With so many races, it's going to be tough to feel like over the long run they get there. But their form and race pace does seem just even far ahead of their next competitor, and even obviously quicker than the second Red Bull car. So yeah, I think there could be some good things in store over the course of a longer season.
yeah, so very interested to see, and especially with Carlos being at kind of such a high level of performance at the moment, I
Yeah,
think that will be exciting to see. Like we said, he's racing for a seat. There's rumors of him being on Red Bull's short list of potential drivers, which I mean, it just makes logical sense that
of
they're
course.
like, yeah, if Checo just does terribly the rest of the season and we do decide to replace him, who would we want? Well, there's a guy right there who's showing he's got good performance in him. Um,
Right.
but looking over to kind of I think the one of the bigger disasters of the weekend with Mercedes. We just had a just very rough weekend for them with the double DNF. Lewis losing his engine, and then the weird situation with George on the last lap of the race behind Fernando Alonso.
Yeah, that was kind of wild. And kind of dramatic for a short period of time, but obviously all the safety systems in place, everybody got slowed down and made aware of it. So yeah, dramatic in the moment, not as much for Lewis obviously, but zooming out just a little bit, looking at it from the scope of like the team and Mercedes. Yeah, definite rough one. You're not in a good spot taking double DNFs like early in the season. Obviously, we were just talking about it being a longer season. You have more opportunities for points in these things. But that's a big loss, especially when at least one of your cars is like podium possible. You would
Mm-hmm.
figure like any weekend in, right? To lose that one like that is really tough. And then, just the experienced driver in Lewis. I mean, yeah, just a really tough weekend. And like we've said here on the pod before, like one that you just want to forget from Mercedes and just bring me Suzuka as fast as you can, please.
Yeah, well, and from their side too, you you have Ferrari and McLaren and Aston, who are all kind of your toughest competition, all
Hmm.
bagging. You get a P1, P2, a P3, P4 for two of your toughest competitors and everything. And so you want to kind of salvage the weekend and get as many points as you can. But
Hmm.
so that's very disappointing. I'm sure from their team and garage and all. But looking at kind of the two things from this, so I agree with you. Like the safety systems worked and everything, but what do you think that a red flag would have been fine to throw in the incident? George was, of course, in his cockpit over the team radio calling for a red flag, and I'm sure absolutely terrifying. The bottom of your car is facing, so you can't even see what might potentially be coming at you.
Right.
I'm assuming that because I think Lance Stroll was the next driver, and Lance was maybe 12 seconds behind from what I remember seeing at the point that he crashed and all. So, one, a good amount of time for the virtual safety car to get hit and for cars to slow down, teams to get on the radio and be like Russell crashed in this turn, like be careful, you're coming up on it, and all, and but in his position, I completely get being just terrified of like what might be coming down the track.
Yeah, for sure. No, I think like So are you asking, do I think
Do you think they
like
should have
a
red flagged it instead of the virtual safety car and just ended the race? Because the virtual safety car essentially ends the race anyway. It's on the last lap and all. So like what, um, like I don't know if there would have been much difference because the cars would still have come
right,
through and
right.
everything. But
That's why I was kind of
um,
confused.
well, it
Cause
was
yeah,
just a topic that a lot of people felt like with that position and the potential danger and everything that a red flag should have been thrown. But after kind of like thinking through it, I saw some other people who've been around the paddock a bit more kind of being like it would have essentially been kind of the same situation. But I wasn't sure if you had any strong feelings either way on red flagging or virtual safety car or how that was handled.
especially on the last lap and a half. No, I mean it ices the race either way. And I'm always in favor, always like if safety is of the question, you go with, whatever helps the most. And if a red flag helps the most, yeah, fine. Like that's what I'm for. But if in the moment they effectively achieve the same thing, yeah, I don't think it really matters.
Yeah.
Obviously George is on the radio, everybody can hear that. Seems like he did the right thing. Just seems like everybody did the right thing, and
Yeah.
everybody's all
It
good.
worked out. But then the other component of this, of course, Fernando Alonso gets the post race penalty, which ends
Yeah.
up being a 20-second, drops him down to P7, I believe, but or P8 maybe. But um, what were your thoughts on that? I saw a bit of a analysis and everything. Obviously, George came up quickly on him, where George didn't really expect it, but from this or to the side of like giving him a post race 20-second penalty, I thought that was pretty extreme. For I mean, there are a lot of things that you can say in terms of why he did it, but I mean we see drivers backing up other drivers pretty frequently. We saw Magnussen do it. We saw Checo do it to Lewis Hamilton in Abu Dhabi and everything a couple years ago. It seems like it's kind of part of racing, and it was definitely not like a brake check from Fernando, in my opinion. I felt like that was a bit steep of a punishment.
I don't think it's a brake check in the way that we understand it. So if you look at the telemetry, he does break from what his pattern was on like damn near every other lap. So he breaks earlier going into the corner, picks up the throttle mid corner, brakes again, and then throttles off. So the analysis that I was looking at was he was playing the DRS game. He was saying, if you're coming up on me in this turn, I'm going to give you position and just get you back in the DRS. So it seems like it was a conscious racing decision made by Alonso. Yeah, it does back George Russell up. And then the component for George Russell was he got too close, pushing too hard, and it seems like it's a dirty air problem that pushes him, gives him the oversteer, and then sends him into the wall. So it feels like from that angle, like, yeah, I can understand the erratic driving call because it it did endanger somebody. They did, go into the wall. I'm curious what it would look like for other drivers doing a similar move if it doesn't result in a crash. Like
Right.
I'm pretty sure there's and this was the comparison given was Fernando on Lewis Hamilton like doing the same thing, and it was like vying for that DRS angle. Are you saying like, okay, if you want to pass me, like pass me and I'm gonna just get you right back. So I'm of the opinion that the racing penalty seems a bit steep, but because the move in question resulted in the opposing driver becoming at risk, it just seems reasonable that it was done. I don't know like to what degree or what it should be or like how many
Hmm.
seconds or whatever, but just that like there's safety involved and it is kind of a like seems a bit aggressive to me if I'm honest. Of like kind of break effectively brake checking in a corner like that or like like trying to pull the okey doke in a really high speed kind of area
Yeah.
like that. It's tough, but yeah, I think it's in general fine because I don't think they want to encourage maybe risky driving like that, like high risk, high reward kind of thing where you're, maybe playing with each other's health a little bit. That's maybe not what the FIA wants to support. So therein, apply a penalty to hopefully dissuade drivers in the future. What are your thoughts on this?
I just it's tough because you're at the end of the race. Your tires are going off and everything. And yeah, like do understand. I saw the telemetry and everything with that, and that he deviated. But at the same time, like who knows? Like sometimes your tires are falling off a cliff as you're driving, and you are taking things a little differently. Like going slower into the corner to get a better exit out of the corner, and hopefully like maybe, oh yeah, like okay, George is going to be a little bit closer to me here, but he's going to take the normal racing line, be slower out of the corner. This is going to give me a better exit to be able to just guarantee that I'm like that I have the pace and he can't catch me for this last lap and everything. And so I the deviating from like your normal pattern just seems like not a valid reason to me, because drivers take different racing lines depending on the situation. And I'm sure there were multiple components. It might have been him trying to, yeah, kind of play the DRS game a little bit. Could have been him just trying to get a better exit. Could have been like a number of things, that his tires were just not doing well or as well at the end of the race, and he was trying to change his strategy to ensure that in a tighter corner he doesn't have a spin or slide or something like that that does cost him a position. I think there are
Hmm.
plenty of reasons that he could have done that without it being like, oh, I'm like, I don't think the intention was to catch George out and like throw him off to the point where he like ends up crashing out. I think he was trying to do something strategically to better his chances, but I don't think in Fernando's mind anything ever crossed it going, this could potentially cause George to crash. I don't think there was any sort of where you could make that argument where in other instances where the with Max and Lewis, when Max lets Lewis by and like brake checks him on the straightaway and everything. This seemed like there was no intention in my mind of causing George to crash, but just to secure the position. And
Right.
in without the dirty air and everything, like George probably wouldn't have crashed, and that's not
Right.
really on Alonso for there being dirty air behind the car, in my opinion. So I don't
Yeah,
really,
no,
I don't see
I don't
like,
think it's Fernando's fault either. That's what I'm saying.
which is
I don't think
why
it's Fernando's fault either.
yeah, which is why, in my opinion, like if if he's not at fault, then he shouldn't be penalized. I understand that the result of it and everything is probably what brought that out, but I also don't think that penalizing people because of the way things result is like I don't think they should be doing that. They should be penalizing the actions and not going like in retrospect, oh wow, well actually like this was part of why, because it did unintentionally cause George to have dirty air and result in a crash and everything. But there was nothing that was done dangerously by Alonso, in my opinion, to cause that, other than George, like, maybe not expecting to be, like he said, I didn't expect to be that close. Well, dude, sometimes that happens. Like, sometimes you catch someone a little bit quicker than you anticipate for a multitude of reasons in Formula One. If you're kind of just checked out at the end of the race, just anticipating same old, then that's kind of on you too.
Yeah, definitely. I definitely agree. Yeah, interestingly, no, I don't think it's Fernando's fault. I don't believe he was like malicious or aggressive in his move. I think he was just planning to have to race George in a little bit, and unfortunately that caused that, collision and crash. So yeah, ultimately I think I agree with you. I just also understand the FIA's feeling that they have to do something about it.
I see the, like, I the reasoning from their side makes sense of why they did it. I just don't think that that's the way they should be deciding those things. And I think Fernando also, like, he had made a pretty big post that was like, no driver ever drives every single lap 100% quali lap every lap of every race. Like, that's not how this sport goes. So the fact that me deviate, he basically said, like, the fact that me deviate, like, gets a penalty, it's like it's racing. So like it's a bummer. But I mean, he had a pretty solid race. I just think, the penalty was, in my opinion, not warranted. But we move forward. George was all right. Fernando bags a few less points on the weekend for Aston, but still double points finish for them with him and Lance. Haas getting a double points finish, like you said. Magnussen making out like a bandit. Just a massive bag of points for them to really, in a tight mid to back field of the grid. Just that's massive.
Yeah, and like you kind of hope to see that continues. Haas has traditionally been, what would you say, like, has more recently been good on a Saturday, struggles on Sundays, and end up not accumulating a whole lot of points. But this is the type of finish that I think, if you're looking to, if you're thinking about buying a Haas hat, this may have been a good weekend to increase your considerations. That's all I'm getting at.
Yeah, I mean, and they are now up to P7 ahead of Williams, Kick Sauber, and Alpine, all with 0 points. RB picked up some great points with Yuki this weekend, and benefiting, of course, from Fernando's penalty. Yuki bumping up to P7 and bagging 6 points. So those two teams really taking advantage of some good just good fortune on the weekend and everything. And Yuki drove just a lights out weekend. I mean,
For
making it to
sure.
Q3 in qualifying, and then just putting in a really solid race. Ricardo's qualifying is disappointing, but I don't think he said that it was something just wasn't like making sense or jiving with the car. But I mean, that may be the case, but also he had a lap that would have gotten him into Q2 and a better starting position if he had just stayed in the limits of in the track limits.
Yeah,
Losing
track limit
that
lows.
time, like he could have potentially been up in P10, 11, 12 to start with how Yuki did and all. And so I hope he just like puts together a solid weekend, but I felt like he was a little more down than he needed to be because he did bring it back really well during the actual race and comes all the way up to, I believe he finished like P12. Yeah, P12 after starting out in P18. So overall, I think that's a solid drive from him. That, I mean, Yuki had just the qualifying and the race together. He just had a nice race overall, in my opinion. So hopefully doesn't get too down on himself because I felt like otherwise he drove pretty solidly.
Yeah, decent. I think you, if you're him, you definitely want to be grabbing points. You definitely feel like, what, dude? Like I'm a race winner. Like why does this feel so hard? You could understand a little bit of maybe self doubt in that regard, but yeah, I think some definite, some things to look forward to, and definite improvement, I would say from them. So yeah, I don't think too many reasons to be down, like you were saying.
I think that RB has a good shot to continue to like battle towards those those last points positions and everything. And of course, Yuki taking advantage of just good qualifying performance and just being able to put in a nice race as well, picking up those points for RB. But yeah, a lot of just interesting points from this weekend. I think the race itself, like I said, the middle was a little bit slow, but there's a lot of implications from just like all the different instances from this weekend with the double podium 1-2 from Ferrari, McLaren's performance, Mercedes, double DNFs. There's it's early, but that's potentially could have a big effect later in the year as we're getting down to the end of the season for those constructors positions.
Oh yeah, of course. I mean, it'll all matter, the closer we get towards the end. What's interesting, we have a couple of circuits that have been and are pretty similar to each other. So barring, these weird mechanical failures and this and that, we may be seeing some similar results, if teams are, having strength in one area over another. With Suzuka coming up next, we're gonna have another like really like low drag circuit, you would call it, pretty high speed in some of those sectors. So yeah, a lot of good races to look forward to. This one was a fun one. Obviously the podium for the 2024 Australian Grand Prix: Carlos Sainz P1, Charles Leclerc P2, Lando Norris P3. But yeah, that's a little bit of a rundown of this Australian Grand Prix. We've got the third of our cool down lap segments that we finally locked it in here. We wanted to have a couple rotating ones for you, but we finally locked in a good third one. So Aaron, why don't you take me through a day in the life here?
Yeah, so I wanted to just talk about my opportunity this weekend to do a little bit of go karting. It was a very very short experience. it felt even shorter while I was driving because I felt like I thought partway through the go-karting that I was like, I could just do this for a long time. I was like, I could just knock out lap after lap after lap and be perfectly happy. However, so the setup for this go-karting experience, I had some friends from New York and friends from Philadelphia. We got together in like New Jersey somewhere for some go-kart racing for my birthday. But the track, for one, they talked about it being this like biggest, like, I don't know if it was biggest indoor track or biggest track in like the vicinity or whatnot, but it was a bit tighter than I anticipated. It was like a lot windier, a lot more turns. There was only one real like straightaway at all. And I will fully admit I did not have a good race. So there was one that was the track being a little different. I was just sort of surprised. I didn't really know what to expect. So, but they did it just 7 minutes of racing, and fastest lap that you did was like your placement and all.
Okay.
So I finished a brutal P17. I did not set myself up well. I didn't give myself clean air to go for a run. I was too close on the heels of a car in front of me, and
Gotcha.
I followed the rules too much. And so if I did it again, I think I would do better. I think my friends might disagree with me, so
Gotcha.
hopefully they'll throw some comments giving me a hard time like they did after the race. They're like, dude, what happened? But the people telling us about all the rules and everything were very strict. They're like, no bumping, do not do this, do not do that, like you will get like slowed down, we will like not tolerate this. And so I was like just trying to make any passes that I had to make as clean as possible without like no rubbing his racing, no
Sure.
nothing, didn't want to put anyone into the wall. And so I was, for the first like probably half to 3/4 of the time that we were out there and all, I was like just trying to make my moves, thinking that everyone's doing the same thing, as I'm only seeing a couple people around me, until I get absolutely blown past by a couple of the guys. And I was like, and like they're just like shooting the gap and like going crazy afterwards. They're like, yeah, we bumped people. Yeah, I saw the people on the officials all around the track like holding up no bumping signs that I didn't know who. I was like, not me, so I'm good. But apparently a bunch of the guys were just full sending it, and I probably should have done the same. But I was, being a little too cautious, a little too timid, and following the rules a little too much, causing myself to be pretty slow on the weekend. So that is my go-karting recap. But it was a blast. I would love to do it again. I'd love to do like an outdoor track like what I've seen with the go-karting championships, where they do have these like longer circuits and all. I think that would be pretty cool. But it was so much fun.
Nice. Yeah, I imagine, you're just getting a lay of the land. Just think of that as FP1, dog. Like, that's all it is.
I was thinking, I'm like, man, but I was, in my mind, I was like, oh, okay, I'm like figuring out the turns. Okay, I figured out this. And then I only ended up doing like 5 total laps. And I was like, in my 7 minutes, I was like, oh, and that's where I was like, oh man, I could have just like, I easily done like a 20-25 lap, just cruising out, figuring out the lines, hitting all the apexes
Yeah, there
and
you
just
go.
having a good time. So,
Nice.
but nonetheless,
Drafting.
even though I was like Logan Sargent out there, I had a good time racing. So
Hell yeah.
definitely a fun experience.
Well, I'm glad you had a good birthday experience. That's exciting for the big 2-1. That's a huge one. Big
I know,
milestone.
absolutely. So
Yeah, next year you got the big 21 coming up again. That'll be really exciting. We just
yeah,
never age here.
yeah, just every birthday. It's just my next 21st birthday. Having
Yep.
a great time. But I will say the place had all sorts of other like games and whatnot, like a Dave and Buster's kind of thing. And
Sure.
so I did make up for it a little bit by throwing the fastest of anyone on the speed pitch. So I may have been slowest in the car. I was fastest at throwing a baseball or
Okay.
whatever those little balls were.
Yep.
So I'll make up for it just a tiny bit with that. But
Hell yeah.
yeah,
Well,
so
that's a solid day in the life. Now, over my way, we've got some interesting changes to what used to be, well, what I used to refer to as the Commander 9 play group.
okay,
So, we used to have it set up where I would write down the commanders, I would write down who won, we would talk about like the most valuable card and see how many turns, and then I would take that data and I would plug it into an Excel sheet. But one of the problems that we always encountered with the Excel sheet was like factoring in all the different commanders that people want to play and like new builds and all this. So eventually, like, I would just break all of these Excel sheets that we made because like I couldn't figure out like how to keep it, doing the thing until there's an app that Ian found. It's called playgroup.gg
okay,
where it tracks it all for you and it data crunches, it has like nice little readouts, but it's got like an app that's tied to like a website, and with just a couple more inputs than like a normal life tracker app, it gives you like all of this really exciting data. It shows you like little game breakdown, shows you like how long your turns were, how much damage you did, how much commander damage you did, like who was
okay.
knocked out first, and just like all of these like little things. You can rate the game. You can say like, were you happy? Were you salty? Like all of these things. So it's been a really fun and interesting way to kind of just like upgrade our play group a little bit and,
Okay.
get just a little bit more kind of out of the game, see who's winning more, and just like all of these things where previously like it would just be on my notebook. So like once I left, you would either have to like text me or you would never know. You would just have to be like, "Damn, I wonder who won that game," you know?
Gotcha. So each person has their own profile that you're able to like
Right.
see and keep your own data and all for the play group and all. That's pretty
Right.
cool.
Yeah,
That
it's really
simplifies
neat.
it a lot.
Oh, big time. Because now I can just keep the notebook as like it's just like the paper backup, but it doesn't have to be this thing that like, oh, then I gotta keep this Excel sheet going and all of this. Like the app just does it all and does it even way better than I was. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? So it's been really fun, and I think an interesting, just kind of an interesting look, like into just kind of what goes on in our games. So that's been really fun and really exciting new thing for when we play Commander.
Nice. That's awesome. And
Hmm.
makes it a lot easier just on you and entry and everything. You're not having to take on a second job doing data entry
Right.
to just keep track of the games and all. So it's definitely that's cool that you or that Ian was able to find that to make that process easier and give everyone
Yeah.
the data and all for it. So
Yeah. It was a great ad.
nice, but that does bring us to the end of this week's episode. So as always, thank you guys for taking the time to listen with us and join us to talk through F1 and some other topics as we go through. But But yeah, it's a blast. We really appreciate it.
Thank you very much, everybody, for listening, watching, wherever you are. We appreciate it very much. And till next time, we'll just say peace out, everyone.
See you guys.